life in general for anyone is hard. Add on top of the fact that you have a disability, medical issues, it's even harder. So you gotta break, because you're not going to survive it with your original mentality. As a Black disabled woman that is, not a size 2, I had a lot of proving to do, especially in the entertainment industry. I don't look the part. If one door closed, another one's going to open. It might not open tomorrow. It might not open next month. It might not open for another year. But best believe when it's time, he going to open that door.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 179 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. Today, our guest is Candis Welch. At 18 months, she was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, but despite the early predictions on her life, Candis is now a 32-year-old college graduate that holds a master's degree in public administration, has been Issa Rae's assistant for 5 years, and she works full-time for the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority, all from her wheelchair. Candis is going to be opening up about some of the challenges that she's faced along her dream driving journey, what it's like to be a disabled woman of color in the entertainment industry, and why she's so committed to improving herself, remaining strong, changing the perception of those that are disabled or use mobility devices, and why being an advocate for others living with disabilities is so important to her. Some of the other things that we discussed in this episode include having agency in your life, the power of faith, stereotypes within the disabled community, launching her blog, Can on Wheelz, lessons she learned from working with Issa Rae. I'm telling you guys are going to love this episode. Candis's story is so empowering, so moving. And as you guys may know, I grew up with a mother who's disabled, so hearing Candis share her story really meant a lot to me on a personal level. If you love this episode, please share it with someone. I love it when you guys screenshot and share on Instagram. You can also share on Twitter, Facebook, wherever. You can text it to somebody. Just spread the word, spread the message. Every week when you guys are reposting, resharing, it really helps grow the Dreams and Drive community. And for that, I am so appreciative and so grateful. Make sure that you are following us on social as well. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you want to join our online newsletter, The Keys, which comes out weekly, just go to dreamsanddrive.com/join. Last thing, I want to say thank you to all of you guys who are subscribing and leaving reviews on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. This most recent one comes from Word Hours, and it says, "So relatable. Although I'm not quitting my job anytime soon, episode 178 was so relatable to how I'm feeling creatively and trying to make realistic goals. On top of making realistic goals, it's been kind of challenging to think about what you really want for your brand versus what you see other people doing that's successful for them. Thanks so much for this. Thanks so much for leaving that review. If you want to hear your review in the next episode of Dreams and Drive, please go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating, and then click write a review. All right, let's get into this episode. Hope you enjoy hearing Candis's story. When you think back about who you were as a kid and what was inspiring you, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Even as a young child, even with all the medical issues I had, I was still very much a kid, and I loved the fact that every Friday meant that I could go out and be with my dad and go to like the Sanrio store and just be a regular kid. And that gave me like a sense of normalcy, if you will, because everything else in my life was different. Everything else that you can imagine, from my home life, both my parents were divorced, although they were great parents and were great co-parents. I was born and raised in a divorced family, so that was different back in the 80s, especially with me going to a religious Christian school. That was very different, seeing that as far as like my medical issues and my disability, obviously that was very different because everywhere I went, I was the only one that was physically different. On the schoolyard, I was different. In the classrooms, I was different. I think just the inspiration that drove me was just the moments that I could just be a regular kid.
Can you tell our listeners what exactly were your medical conditions growing up and kind of a little bit more about like your medical story?
I was diagnosed at 18 months old with spinal muscular atrophy, which is under the umbrella of muscular dystrophy. And basically, spinal muscular atrophy is a rare disease, and it's a muscle deterrent. It just like kills all the strength in your muscles, and although it's slow progressing, it eventually will leave you very weak in the extremities, such as your arms and legs. And for me, as a kid, I was not able to walk. I was not able to run or jump. That was a part of the disability. So in conjunction with that, I had a very severe spinal curvature. It pretty much allowed me to walk even differently. I almost resembled how a penguin would walk because of the curvature. Also, because I was weaker in my core and in my arms and legs, I could fall easily. So I always had to use some type of standing apparatus, such as a walker, or if I was going long distances while I still had the ability to walk, I would use a wheelchair because I would be out of breath quite fast. It just continued to progress. Unfortunately, one year, I think I was around 9 or 10, I ended up breaking my left leg, and due to the fact that I was not able to use crutches because that you needed to kind of like do a hop or kind of like a jump to utilize that mechanism, I was bed rested for, I'd say, a good 6 to 7 months. So,
well, that must have been tough, especially as like being a young child, right? Because you still want to be active and you still have that childlike, enthusiasm about life, right?
Yeah, it was very hard to see my friends out, playing and, running and, being active. And I was just kind of sitting with a broken leg and not able to really do anything but watch from a window. So that really kind of deflated my spirits during that time. When it was time to remove the cast, unfortunately, I had lost the ability to walk because I had been bed rested for so long. So my mother and father were adamant, like, let's get her into therapy. And it just never quite took. So around 11, I was pretty much dependent on a wheelchair to move around. And also around that time, my mother realized that breathing and bending over was causing me a lot of pain. So she took me to the doctors, and they found out at that time my spinal cord was curved so badly it was puncturing my lungs, and it was moving my other internal organs out of place. So at a very young age, I was basically told, you either need to have the spinal fusion surgery, which, because of the damage to your lungs, you might not be able to survive the anesthesia for 8 to 9 hours. Or you don't have the surgery and you die within 6 months.
Oh, man. That's wow. Your parents or the doctors had this conversation with you there? Or like, was it between your parents and they kind of came back and relayed to you the information?
No, my mother and father were very open because at this time I had been through so much. Mm-hmm. My mother was like, we're not going to shield her from her own truth. So my mother and my father and I were in that office, and I heard it from start to finish. And my mother and my father were, of course, a little bit more distraught. And I was just kind of like, wow, I don't want to die, but this already feels like death, what I'm already going through. So I rather take the chance. And needless to say, my mother was not enthused with my decision, but she allowed me to make that decision because I don't think it would have been fair for her to make that decision. I needed to make that decision. Even at a young age, I needed to make that decision. So we proceeded with the surgery, and although there were a couple complications, I made it out after 9.5 hours with a brand new titanium steel spine, and I was on a new lease of life because I was no longer going to be in pain by just breathing.
So what was your purpose then from that point on?
I think my purpose was just to be somewhat normal. Again, I was always seeking to be normal. I wanted to get back into school. Around that time, after my full rehabilitation, which took about 1.5 years, I was getting ready to go to high school. I wanted to just be a high school freshman. I wanted to just not have to deal with so many medical issues. So I think at that point, it was not some grandiose idea. I just really wanted to just be a high school freshman and enjoy just trying to be somewhat normal.
Were you able to achieve that?
No, no, not at all. Because I was still in therapy, but because I was in therapy, I tore my MCL in my right knee 3 times, my ACL in my left knee 2 times.
From physical therapy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was over the course of 3 years. So by the time I became a senior, my mother basically just sat down with me because I was just so unhappy. And I was like, look, I don't want to do therapy no more. I want to keep trying to be normal. I want to do senior prom. I want to run for homecoming queen. Like, I just want to be normal. And she was like, okay, no therapy. Like, we won't do it this year. And senior year was amazing. I ran for homecoming queen. Although I didn't win, I still had an amazing time running for it. And I went to prom, and I went to all the football games, and I hung out at the mall with my friends and took those weird 90s pictures at the photo booths. And I did all the stuff that everyone else was doing for once.
I feel like it feels like that was something that was very important for your journey, right? Having that sense of agency over what you could do with your life.
Yeah, definitely. Because I never had it. It was always stripped from me at some point. And for 1 year, I got to just be a senior in high school. I got to just be Candis, not Candis that had this going on and that going on and dealing with this and that. I just got to be Candis.
Did you have a dream for what life would be like as and I'm saying this in air quotes, the grown-up Candis, right? Like, you had made it to this point in your life, high school, senior year. You finally had this point of normalcy. Were you able to have like a vision for what you could see life being like after high school?
Yes and no.
Okay.
All I wanted to do out of high school was go to college. That was drilled in me from almost the womb, probably. But I wanted to go to an unconventional school. So I was really, really big on choir. That was one of the one things that during high school, no matter what, I always enjoyed. And it brought out my love for singing. And so for after high school, I decided I wanted to go to a musical school, and I applied and thought, okay, Candis at 18 is going to go to this school, move to one of the coldest areas on the East Coast, and get my own apartment, and it's going to be amazing. And I got accepted to the school, and I freaked out, and I could not do it. I was afraid to leave home and go that far away with no family. I decided to postpone my I guess, what do they call it? Postpone my acceptance.
Like delay? What is it called? There's like a certain terminology, like you delay. I forgot what it. Yeah, deferment. Yeah, deferral. Yeah.
So I decided to do that, and they gave me I think it was a semester I could defer, I think. And at the end of my deferment, I was just like, I'm going to just not go. I used to regret it. I was like, man, what would have been my life if I had went? But my life is pretty dope now, so I'm okay with it.
It definitely does seem like it's pretty dope. It's interesting that I'll tell the listeners now. So I talked about this in my email pitch to you, but I grew up with a mother who was disabled. She became disabled like later on in life. So I want to say when I was about like 10 months, we were in a really bad car accident that left me with a fractured skull. It's a 10-month-old, and she, her right side of her body was basically like she had a traumatic brain injury. So everything that she knew how to do up until that point, she had to learn how to do again, like read, walk. And she was like never really the same. She was about to finish nursing school, and she just never went back, right? It was always like, oh, okay, I'll just take care of the kids. And I've always seen my mom. And as I've gotten older, I've seen like, if only she had certain resources available to her at that point, where she might have felt a little bit more empowered, that she didn't have to give up on so much that she did give up on. Do you feel like at this point in your life, you had resources available that might have made the anxiety about leaving not as bad?
No, I mean, possibly one of the anxieties was having to try to find a nurse or care provider. But mostly, no, I would just say it was sheer fear that I was going to be away from everything I knew. And I don't think anything as far as like a modification would have helped that. Now, older, as I became older, yeah, modifications would have been great. But at 18, no, I think I was just scared. And I think some people are afraid to admit that. I was just scared.
Did you have a fear also whether or not like you'd make it beyond just leaving your family? Like, was there a fear about the fear of the future and what your future might look like as well?
Yeah, for a long time I had a fear of like not seeing myself go past the age of 25, because a lot of my friends that I had met who had a similar disability were like, had already passed away.
Wow.
So I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to see a certain point of my life. And I wouldn't be able to do certain things. Like I was afraid that I wouldn't ever fall in love. I wouldn't ever, get a boyfriend, like a real one, not like a little high school boyfriend, but like a real boyfriend. I was afraid of those things because I didn't see them happening for other people that looked like me and that went through the same things like me. I saw them very, very much introverted or never really getting to experience a real social life or a dating life, or passing away so quickly and that they didn't really get to experience life. So I think that was my big fear. Like, am I going to be able to experience life?
So what did you decide? Because it seems like you have been able to experience life. How did you work through that fear and really set on the goal of defining who Candis Welch was going to be?
I think the way I worked through that fear was through my faith in God, because I had to stop questioning him. For so many years, I was like, why? Why? Why are you doing this? Why am I going through this? Why do I have to feel this? And one day I was just like, you know what, this is it. Like, this is my life. He must have given me this life because he knew I was strong enough to handle it. I know a lot of people who would have broke down and never gotten back up. And I know I have been chosen to go through this life the way I have because I'm strong enough to go through it. I'm strong enough to survive through it. I had to stop asking God why and just put my faith in him that whatever his plan is for me, I need to follow it and I need to trust it.
Let's talk about that plan. Let's talk about a moment along this journey where you realize, all right, I got to trust this. I'm going to do it. I don't know where it's going to lead to, but I'm going here.
That was not a moment. It was almost like a decade.
Yes, let's start walking down this journey, this path again.
Yeah, a decade would be Candis in her 20s. I would say it really just started with me moving out of my mother's house because that was not heard of.
At 18, right? If I haven't... Girl, listen, I'm still 27. I'm still living. So, okay.
So, yeah, that was just unheard of, especially with someone with my issues and obstacles. It was just unheard of. And so that was the first step of just moving out and then staying out.
Were you able to stay out?
Yeah, successfully. I mean, there were some times where I had to go back like once or twice, but out of me currently being 33 years old, I predominantly stayed out of my mother's house and made sure that I had my own independence. Another big step that I really don't talk about a lot is from 18 till about 25, 26, I was utilizing government assistance. My father was a war hero in Vietnam. And so he set it up that I could receive his military benefits for the rest of my life.
Wow. And he passed away when you were in high school, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, actually right before high school, like I was around 13.
So he had done that, like, was this something that was like part of a will, or was it just something that when you were younger, you always had access to his benefits?
Oh, no. I think this is something that he had set up close to his death.
Okay.
And, so I was utilizing that money. It's not the same as like a Social Security, but it's similar. You know, they restrict how much additional money you can make, and it comes every month like clockwork. And there was a point where I said, okay, well, this is not enough money. It's good. Like, if I want to stay home and, go back home and live with mom, but it's not enough money to do the things I want to do. I wanted to take little trips. I just wanted to just not be limited. So I decided to go and get a full-time job. And I knew I needed benefits because I'm disabled. I can't go without health insurance. Mm-hmm. I ended up, after graduating college with my degree, I finally got a job. It was a decent paying job. I got off assistance. And there's like this little caveat period of 5 years when you can go back to receiving the assistance without having to reapply. And I made it a personal goal. I said, I will not go back to that. And I have not and will not.
What did you find? Like, what was the job hunting experience like in the interviews? I know, I read in one of your blog posts, which I love your blog, by the way. You were just talking about how, and we'll talk about the Issa Rae experience, but you talked about how like that Issa Rae experience was one of like a time where in comparison to other job interviews you've had where you felt like you weren't judged. Like, what was that whole job interview process like? And how did you find, or how can other people who may be differently abled be able to select the right employer that can fit their needs and is what's the right word? Like they care about your needs as well.
Well, I think, we have to erase the fact that you have to find an employer that cares.
Okay.
Because regular employers for quote unquote normal people don't care. So I think we need to stop sugarcoating the work field for the disabled. I learned that a long time ago. Nobody cares that you're going through whatever you're going through. They hired you for a job. They want you to show up. And I think one of the stereotypes that attack the disabled community is that we're going to be late. We're not reliable. We're not professional. We call out sick too much or whatever. Pick your option. They blame it on us. And I feel like we got to stop hand-holding the disabled community in that aspect and just let it be known it's a job and you got to show up. And granted, there are some jobs that just don't work for every disabled person. Some people are better with tech and they can do it from their home. Some people can do customer service from their home. Some people are really great in office settings. It just depends. I think when you are a disabled individual or any individual, you need to really look at what and how you thrive. I don't thrive very well with at-home jobs. I like to interact. I like office settings. So I wanted to be out and about in the working field in that capacity. But I always had to remember, no one's going to hold my hand. No one's going to be like, oh, are you tired? It's okay. Take a rest. No one's going to say that. So if you are out here trying to get a job, be prepared. It's a rat race. And whoever crosses the finish line first and gets the job done in the best way and most productive way, that's who wins the race. There's no pity in that. There's no hand-holding. And I want people who read my story to realize I didn't have nobody hand-holding me through these interviews. I applied for jobs and best believe I got definite surprise looks when I rolled up in there because on paper, I got degrees, I have high SAT scores, I had everything to make you look good on paper. I sounded very professional. But when I rolled up in there, they immediately were like, oh, well, how's she going to do this job? So I had to work even harder to prove to them, even after they hired me, that they didn't make a wrong move.
Like, do you feel like that's a form of discrimination, even when you did get the job, that you felt like you had to work harder in order to prove yourself?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. I definitely feel like I had to work hard to prove myself. Just in general, as a Black woman, as a Black disabled woman, that is, not a size 2, I had a lot of proving to do, especially in the entertainment industry. I don't look the part. I just don't look the part. Whatever part that is, I didn't look it. So I had to let my work ethic and hustle speak for itself. And anybody who I've ever worked for, whether it be in government, entertainment, they all have a general consensus. I work my butt off. I stay late just like everybody else. I get to the job by any means necessary. I am going to be one of your most valued employees because I want to show you that I am capable and you didn't make a bad move with hiring me.
Do you feel like that the community and finding a community of other, people who look like you were important during this work period as well?
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of peers that I could lean on for support, because like I said, a lot of them had passed away. A lot of them hadn't even gotten to the point where they could work. And then I live and work in a world where I'm the only one that has the disability, or I should say has the physical disability. So I didn't have a lot of support outside of my mother. It was just me, my mom, and God, and I had to persevere. But believe me, it was not no walk in the park. I will tell anyone that it's not a walk in the park. And I feel like a lot of people try to be like, oh, it's okay. Like, you won't fall, you won't break. And I literally just told someone the other day, you are going to fall, you are going to break. This process of living and thriving as a disabled person is going to break you. It's going to. And you just have to embrace that, because you're going to come out stronger. You have to be stronger. You have to get through the weakness. I almost feel like it's breaking out the weakness in you. Like, it's just ripping that out, because you have to be strong to survive the real world. Life in general for anyone is hard. Add on top of the fact that you have a disability, medical issues, it's even harder. So you gotta break, because you're not going to survive it with your original mentality. You gotta break.
What helped you during your breaking points? Like, when you had that moment where you felt like you were breaking or you had broken, how did you, like, I know, like, beyond just like having that mindset and having your mother and having, you know, your belief in God, like, what really helped you get through those moments?
I mean, I sound like a broken record, but it literally was my mother and God.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would not be here without those two influences. God is rooted in me. Like, you'll catch me praying every day, all day, any time of day. And my mother is the one person on this earth who can drive me crazy and also calm me. She knows everything. Like, my mother's been through everything with me. She might not have felt it the way I felt it, but my mother has been through everything I've been through. My mother has been discriminated against based on me. My mother has been disrespected based off of me. My mother is the mirror image of me. She just doesn't have the physical component to speak about. But so I can go to my mother and be like, Mom, this is what happened today, and why is this happening? Like, I can't stand it. And my mother will be like, baby, what is for you will be for you. And for a long time, I didn't really understand. I was like, no, but I really want this job with this agency. Like, I need you to get out of that, Mom. I really want this job. And she's like, what is for you will be for you. And you can't get mad at, God for not giving you something that you thought you wanted, because that's just not for you. If one door closed, another one's going to open. It might not open tomorrow. It might not open next month. It might not open for another year, but best believe when it's time, he gonna open that door. And for a long time, I had to really just marinate on that and say it till I believed it. And today, I can say hands down, I don't question anymore. I just be like, all right, God, that wasn't for me. And when I see other people being promoted, and even if I feel like I might have deserved that, it's not my time yet. I have to be okay with that. And I can't be mad because somebody else is out here getting it. Maybe that's what they need right now. That's not what I need. Because when it's for me, no one is going to be able to take that away from me.
Let's talk about a door that opened for you that I know a lot of people now, are like, wow, the Issa Rae door. How did that come about? How did you become her executive assistant?
Okay, so I was actually working for eHarmony, and they had just recently let go of their entire customer service department. And as I was leaving the building, my friend at the time who was working with Issa hit me and was like, hey, you want to do happy hour? And I was like, no, I'm unemployed.
You got happy hour money?
And he was like, what happened? And I just kind of told him, and he was like, look, I know somebody that needs an assistant. I think you should apply. And I was like, well, is it paying? I don't know what he's talking about. And he was like, yeah, it's paying. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go. Like, I'll go. I don't have no reason not to go. So I went, and it turned out to be Issa Rae. And at the time, She had just got greenlit for her second season of Aqua Black Girl on YouTube.
Okay.
She needed an assistant very, very badly. And I applied. We had a great interview. And Issa was the first person in the entertainment industry that did not judge me or think I was not capable of doing the job. She was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I see you went to school." And Issa's really big on education, so the fact that I had a college degree and it, I could articulate my thoughts in a proper way. She was like, "Oh, okay. Well, let's give it a go." I've been working with her ever since.
What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned about the business of being in the entertainment business just by being her executive assistant? Like, are there some lessons that you've definitely picked up along the way?
Always be nice. A lot of people in the industry get a high horse thinking that they have to be rude to people, demanding. You don't have to do none of that. Issa's camp, we are always very nice, professional individuals, and the old saying is true. You get more with honey than oil or so I would definitely say always be nice. And Issa in general taught me without even knowing it, if you don't like what you're seeing, create it. And if you don't like the deal that's on the table, walk away from it. If you want to see your work flourish, you have to lock in and put in the work. No one's going to hand you anything. You can't be trying to be at all the parties and, it's not going to happen. If you, literally, there are times when we'll be like, "Oh, hey, Issa, there's this event or that event." And she'll be like, "Yeah, I got to write." So, no, I'll pass. And I saw her do that for years. And that's how you get Insecure and, all these amazing other projects she's doing. Because she's locked in and she's like, yeah, nothing else happens unless I write and make this. So she's really dedicated, and she really taught me a tremendous work ethic.
You know what's interesting that you said that? So I interviewed, you probably know him, Benoni Tego. And he talked about how that work ethic is something that, especially being a creator in this industry, that he sometimes feels like a lot of people don't want to invest in. How did you invest in your ability to be the best executive assistant, to be the best at whatever was in your job? Like, were there certain things that you were making sure that you always were learning more about or having continuing education about?
I think just being an executive assistant, my job is to make her day go easy. My job is to make sure that she's taken care of. She's my top priority. And not in a way like, oh, let me make sure she has her coffee or anything like that. But I need to make sure that when I come to her, I have answers. I have solutions. We're not doing the back and forth. I want to make sure that it's a smooth transition. You have to learn your boss or, your client. You have to know what they want. You have to be able to think 10 steps, ahead of them. And Issa's smart, so I got to really be on my P's and Q's. So, and I'm not perfect. Like, I've made mistakes, but I also work for a pretty dope person that is just like, look, we'll get it. Like, the first year of me being her assistant, I did not know what the heck I was doing. I was just like, okay, well, she says she wants things this way. Okay, that's what I'm going to do.
What are some of the day-to-day responsibilities? Because I feel like when you think of assistant, it can vary depending upon the industry, right? The person. Like, what are just some of the basic day-to-day stuff that you're responsible for?
Well, number one, her calendar.
Okay.
I am the one that is adding things on her calendar, speaking with her management about, opportunities that are approaching, anything with color creative. I'm making sure that she's aware, she's up to date on things. So the calendar is king in Issa's life. Like, it has to be accurate. It has to be. It just, there cannot be it can't be too much room for error. Travel, if she has to go somewhere, I'm usually the main contact for that. Just typical responding. My response to emails has to be on point. If she's on set, making sure that any set changes she's aware of, making sure that she's, getting her time to degress and debrief and have a moment for herself. So it's just, taking care of that aspect and working with her management a lot, making sure that, the deals that she needs to sign off on are getting signed off on.
So I have a question that I know our listeners are probably like, when are you going to ask this? You do a lot, girl. Like, how do you manage having a full-time job at the Los Angeles Homeless Service Authority and being like one of the hottest creators in the game right now, assistant? Like, that's a lot of work.
Two things. God and coffee.
Which one's first? God, right?
Definitely God. And then coffee is just because I don't sleep. I definitely, I work two very important jobs, and they both pay me to be on point. So I can't let anything slip. I'm always double checking, triple checking, calling, juggling things, and making sure this gets done, making sure that gets done. So, yeah, just making sure that I am always on point.
What's the dream for you? Like, from this, you're 33 now. Like, where do you see yourself going, or what do you hope, to be achieving in the next few years?
I would like myself to be the focus. So I want to see my blog go from a blog to speaking engagements and panel discussions and brand partnerships and traveling, advocating for people with disabilities across all platforms, whether it be employment, travel. I want to create a network where disabled people can come together and socialize and hang out and talk to each other about things like dating and just how to live independently. The main end goal, though, would be to have my own nonprofit that, caters to disabled adults.
Let's talk about Can on Wheelz. Why the decision to launch the blog?
I would say it's to tell my story, to help somebody else see the light, try to provide some type of guidance, because there was no representation when I was growing up, so I want to be that representation. And mostly, a lot of my friends were just like, why don't you write anymore? And I was like, I don't have time. Do you not see my schedule? And they're like, yeah, but you can write. And so I was like, okay, let me just see. And so I decided, okay, I'll just write a blog. Nobody will probably read it. It's cool. And then my friends were like, yo, this is dope. Like, I didn't even know you went through all this. And I was like, really? You're not a good friend.
Shame on you, right?
Just over time, I was like, well, maybe I should probably do something with this. Maybe I should try to get it out there more. And then it just became like, I'm doing this to get it out there.
So I know, like, even just with handling this interview, you have a publicist, like someone who helps you with that. Like, who else is on your support team in making this dream or making this part of the dream come alive?
Definitely my publicist. My publicist is amazing. She really believes in Candis, not just Can on Wheelz. She believes in me. So I feel like you always want to get you a team that believes in you, because after all of this goes away, they still believe in you. I would say, like, my best friend, she does my hair and makeup. Right?
Your pictures are dope too, by the way. Love your pictures.
Thank you. She wants me to be in the best light because she's seen, the dark days. So she's dedicated to just seeing me flourish and wants to be around, someone that is really telling their truth. So I really love her for that because it goes beyond makeup and hair. She literally has been in the trenches with me for many years. She's like my heart. So I definitely feel like she's a part of that team. And my photographer, I've known her since undergrad at Cal State Northridge. She took my graduation photos. She's been in multiple classes with me. And she's just dope. And she's a dope photographer, a dope person. I'm a firm believer in uplifting my friends in any way possible. So if I can, have her take photos and do video for me, put money in her pocket and give her, an opportunity to build her resume as well, I'm with it. Like, let's get this money together.
What is the biggest challenge that you're facing or you think you're going to face as you continue along your dream driving journey?
Not so much telling my story, but I would think having to let things go. I mean, obviously, I'm dedicated to my blog and my vision, so I can't keep doing every single job that I'm doing now. So I'm
I will hope you wouldn't, girl. You need, listen, 15-hour days, that's a lot. That's a lot.
It definitely is. So I'm definitely going to need to cut back on certain things. I think that's going to be hard, especially because I'm so used to doing things, multiple things, all the time. It's like I've always had 2-3 jobs, so I think it's going to be like a stretch for me just to focus on myself, but I'm up for the challenge.
Thinking about now where you are in your journey, I remember in the beginning of the conversation, we talked about how as a kid, you were always like seeking normalcy, right? Just because everything wasn't normal for you as a child. Like, do you still feel like you're seeking normalcy or you're seeking other people to understand more about what's your normal? Right? We all crazy a little bit, right? Just a little bit. That is so important. And it's funny because as a kid, as I mentioned, like my mom, she grew up with a disability. And as a kid, because I never knew my mom before she had it, right? So like my sister remembered my mom before she was disabled. Everybody had this memory of my mother before she was who she is today. And I remember growing up, I was so ashamed. And I feel bad about it now, like thinking about like how I used to be ashamed of my mom because like she walked with the cane, right? And she was just different from everyone else's mom. But now as an adult, I'm able to look back at her and all that she's accomplished. And every time I think about her, I'm just like, wow, she really was a superhero to me. Cause like kind of, as you said, like you live with so much pain throughout your life. And even now you may deal with medical issues, but you still keep going. And when I look at my mom, she's like this example of somebody who, like, she kept going. Even though she may have deterred from her original dream, she still went on and, like, sacrificed so much so my sister and I could, like, live the lives that we live. I just think it's so important that we bring to light different stories, right? Because a lot of us, we go through life not even realizing that there are other people out there who have different types of normal, but that their normal is still, it's not different in the sense of, I feel like I'm rambling here. I'm just like getting caught up in my emotions, but I just wish as a young child, I didn't feel like ashamed, but it's something that I'm learning through, right? And I know there's so many other people who may have, similar stories where they were ashamed of something that made them different. What would you say to that person who is struggling to accept, who they are and their unique story? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Candis, for sharing your story. Thank you so much. So we have a quick lightning round, right? This part of the interview, I'm just going to give you a prompt and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And we're sticking with our whole dream driving metaphor, okay? So we're going to talk about the gear shifts in the car, okay? All right. The first word is park. Reverse. Neutral. And last but not least, drive. And if you want to be a dream driver, you have to have your keys to success. So what do you think are 3 things that every dream driver needs in their toolkit before they hit the road? Which was the most important to you? And a lot of us might get deterred when things get off track, but it's always getting back on track and remembering the long-term goal, right? And can you tell our dream drivers where they can find you online if they want to check out your blog, they want to follow you on Instagram, all of that?
Handler for Twitter as well as my Facebook page.
All right, so that was a wrap for episode 179 with Candis. I hope that you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you love this episode, you already know what I'm going to ask you. Please share this with a friend, share it with your community. Help me share Candis's story because I know that there are so many more people that can be inspired and touched by what she shared with us today. Remember to follow us on social. We are Dreams and Drive across the board on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well. Make sure that you are subscribed wherever you're listening, whether that be Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Google Play, Spotify, any of your audio apps. Please, please, please hit the subscribe button so that you get notified every time we have a new episode. Make sure that you guys go and check out Candis's blog, Can on Wheelz. Follow her on Instagram, follow her on Twitter, all those spaces. I think it's so dope to see how she's being an advocate for people with disabilities, who use mobility devices, and she's an advocate for their rights to equal access in public and private spaces, transportation, and general accommodations because, you know what? They deserve to live life just as anyone else would, and it's so important that we start opening up the conversation about this because I really feel like there's so many more stories out there, and we need to be inclusive of those stories within our narratives, within all sectors of life. So thank you so much, Candis, for coming on today. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to get Dreams and Drive gear, guys, please help me sell out this Dreams and Drive gear. I have like a few items left in each size from small to 2XL, t-shirts, hoodies, crew necks. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/shop, dreamsanddrive.com/shop. If you buy something this week, I'll throw in something extra. So please, please, please help the Dreams and Drive team clear through this end of year merchandise. And oh yeah, talking about free stuff, we do have Dreams and Drive screensavers for your cell phones and your computers available for free. Just go to dreamsanddrive.com/free, click on the link there, and you can download it ASAP. And one more last thing. I know I keep saying last thing, but thank you so much for the love that you shared on the recent episode 178 about updates for me quitting my job. I really do appreciate all the love, all the inspiration, all the motivating and encouraging words that you guys personally sent me. I read everything. I receive everything. I acknowledge everything. Thank you so much. If you have not listened to that episode, go back and listen to it now. It's episode 178, and I share just some updates about how life has been treating me since I quit my job back in August. All right, keep dreaming, keep driving, and we'll chat again in episode 180. Bye, guys.